Those are my disclosures for you to review, and disclosures also from Federico. I would like to raise the case, if I summarize it at the beginning, that the use of CGM is useful beyond insulin therapy. So if you let me start with some data, this is a real-world study in individuals with type 2 diabetes on basal-only insulin, so one injection a day. And as you can see, those of you that are still interested in glycated hemoglobin, it's a huge reduction. It's not a little bit like we are used in trials, the 0.4 difference for non-inferiority. It is a 1.4% difference when the US cohort is analyzed separately, and a 1.1 when the Canadian part is added into this retrospective analysis. When you look to a similar cohort, again, this is, however, with a different marker. So on your left-hand side, again, those of you that are interested in A1C, but then the rest of the room that are interested in time in range, please note, it's a 12% increase, and we know that anything above 10% is obviously clinically meaningful. So again, in the same population, real-world setting, here the difference. And if you go to non-insulin users, please note that the difference as compared to the basal insulin users is even much larger. We have 300 individuals in the basal insulin use and 700 in the non-insulin use. They were similarly initially, so the A1C had a tragic 10%. But then please note the decrease in non-insulin users, minus 1.6%. So a really impressive change. This is people with type 2 diabetes on basal insulin again, a different study here. This is 1 year before the start and then follow-up of 1 or 2 years after. Please note here the events. So it is a 75% reduction in DKA. This is not only important for well-being of these people. It is obviously important for the cost. And at the same time, an almost 50% reduction in severe hypoglycemia, which again is related to cost. Because of these outcomes that were particularly well studied in France, there is an immediate cost-saving effect of this technology. So you don't have to calculate over 10 years to see the effects of the long-term complications. It is now because of this reduction in acute events that require either emergency department intervention or hospitalization. Here, again, an interesting comparison, because you know how much we emphasize education, and education obviously is the base, very important. But if you add to this education the visualization of glucose levels, if you add CGM, intermittently scanned CGM, please note the difference. So time in range, again, a 10% difference, whether you use education alone or you provide these people with the real view of glycemia. So this real view of glycemia increases the outcome, the time in range, for an additional 10%, which I think is an important message. And this is people with diabetes on GLP-1 receptor agonist only. This is now becoming, I hope, a standard of care. So many people, particularly I hope, in early type 2 diabetes, will be on GLP-1 receptor agonists. Is CGM indicated? Please note, yes, because we switch from the focus on hypoglycemia that was so much emphasized with insulin and perhaps sulfonylureas on hyperglycemia. We want to identify early that perhaps the dose is too low, or perhaps we have to add something to these individuals. Please note here, so this is again the difference in glycated hemoglobin, 1,800 individuals, including in the study, only GLP-1 receptor agonist, and the drop in A1C with the use of intermittently scanned CGM in this study, 1.5%. So a very, very huge impact in the population that uses only GLP-1 receptor agonists. Here, the combination therapy, as you can see here, again, even a more pronounced result. Of course, you can say this is cherry-picked, right? The studies are designed to give this result. And, perhaps you're correct. I may agree with you, but still, here, if you can see, so GLP-1 receptor, only 2,000, almost 2,400 individuals dropped their A1C from 10 to 8, a 2% increase. Even if it's cherry-picked, the benefit for these people, as you well know from the UK PDS, is enormous. That's why there was a group of us that decided to put an initial view on the roadmap how to use CGM in type 2 diabetes. We believe that all people with type 2 diabetes should have access to CGM, and we specifically mention also people that are non on insulin or sulfonylurea. So the very, very large population, an increasing population that perhaps uses just oral therapy or, as we said, GLP-1 receptor agonists, they may benefit enormously because of the hyperglycemia, of the identification of high glucose that finally causes all the long-term complications in diabetes. Just a very short case for the conclusion. This is a lady, by the way, happy International Women's Day to all our colleagues present. Not very obese, a BMI of 29, diabetes now for 13 years. She is using a sulfonylurea, a DAPA, and an oral sema. Please note that the control, the management is obviously inadequate. Time in range, this is local, our local language, 67% beyond the target, obviously no hypoglycemia, and very, very high values. And as you can see here, you see an early morning increase, so the fasting's high. So perhaps many would start to think about basal insulin. This is what was proposed to this lady. She accepted it, she was trained, and she was started on a second generation basal insulin, maintained DAPA, maintained oral sema. Look at the outcome. Very high, dropped to a single percent. High dropped to 8, so altogether 9% above the target. Within the target, 91%. And please note that the fasting normalized. So, and very interestingly, the BMI went down. So just an example of a combined effect of basal insulin and very likely behavioral change with the use of CGM, because otherwise we would not expect a drop in her weight. With this, I thank you for your attention and would like to invite Federico to tell us more on this topic.